Okay, everybody, here goes the immobilizer. It works! The molecules of the water were stopped in mid-motion.
Welcome back to the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike, and today I want to talk to you about the fourth party KO version of the vintage G1 Wheeljack. Now, this is something that's special to me because I've had Wheeljack. Wheeljack's one of my top favorite characters from when I was a kid, and I have vintage ones, but none of them are complete. I don't have any parts for Wheeljacks, and I got my vintage ones for like $5. This is $45 over at Shows. I'll have a link down below where you can get it, but this is a little bit different. There are some differences in this versus the vintage one. Mostly has to do with the accessories, but overall it's pretty much the same thing, bot-wise, look-wise, aesthetic-wise, transformation-wise, and it's nice to have a nice new one and all this kind of stuff. So we're going to go through this, we're going to transform it and do all of that coming up. Okay, so here it is in the packaging, and it looks a lot like the vintage. So we have on the top here, we can see the transformation of it. We see that it has this kind of lip piece here, or whatever you call that big flap at the back. It says Transformers and all that kind of stuff. So I will point out a couple things. Now, I've had a few of these knockoffs in the past, as you can see with the packaging, and I think this is probably half the reason, or 75% of the reason that people are interested in getting this kind of thing, is the packaging. But it seems like maybe these are glued together, two pieces of cardboard where this lip hits this lip and it's glued together, and it doesn't quite align just right. And it is kind of thinner cardstock than, say, what we got with Hasbro. So looking at the Hasbro one, we will do some comparisons as we're looking at this. Even the Hasbro one feels a little bit thicker cardstock. So it is thinner cardstock, and that is something I'm not too excited about. But it still looks really good. It does look the part and all that kind of stuff. So, and then we can kind of just compare these side by side and all that kind of stuff. But I know that when you look at what the KO's doing is trying to match the original 100%, and then what Hasbro was trying to do was, well, they don't match it exactly. They don't want to match it exactly, and the KO's want to match it exactly. So that's kind of the difference that we see with all of that. But here is the packaging. It's pretty good packaging, but now let's see what's inside. Okay, so here it is out of the box. We get the instruction manual, and looks pretty nice. Looks like a pretty good instruction manual. Feels pretty solid. And then we have a baggie of parts. I don't remember exactly how it was packed back in the day. Was it a baggie of these parts? I'm not sure. And then we have the figure in here. Let's see how firm. It's pretty firm on there. You are going to have to cut this off of here, which is something that's going to make it harder to get in the package. But you can just cut around this, and then you can still put it back in and display it like this. So, I mean, there's possible things you can do right there. But it comes with the wings already on the bottom, and you've got the spoiler on the back there. So those kinds of things that, well, I don't know, I don't own a sealed one of these, a new one of these, and I haven't opened one since the 80s, so I actually don't even remember all this. Alright, so here's Wheeljack out of the packaging, and it feels nice to actually see one of these in good condition, because when you see it compared to mine, you're going to see, oh wow, that is in nice condition. So it is nice to see it brand new with all the paint on it and all of that good kind of stuff. So looking at it more close up, nice bright white where it is plastic. It hasn't really yellowed a lot. Well, actually, it's not as bright white as I thought it would be, to tell you the truth, but it is like looking at the painted area of the die-cast, which it does feel like die-cast, versus the plastic and all that kind of stuff. So definitely fun to have an original G1 Wheeljack. It's been so long since I remember seeing these wings, and I looked at some KOs, so not KOs, but some repros to put on mine and stuff, and all that still costs almost as much as this. So to get repro stuff to complete it, or original stuff's just real expensive. So this is really nice. So we're gonna see if all this stuff fits over on the other one too. So that's gonna happen here in a bit, but yeah, it looks good, and I kind of like it. It rolls, and you can feel the die cast in the lower legs, and there's probably in other spots I don't even remember. We'll see as we go. But let's bring in the original one for comparison, and side by side, well, obviously they're the exact same size, which I'm wondering if it's the exact same mold. They just still exist somehow, because that seems to be what's going on. And with that, everything's about the same. And so nice to have a new one, a new version. So nice to have all the parts. And oddly enough, it's just this will be my first time experiencing this with parts on it as an adult. Since childhood, I've never had any parts on mine, so it wasn't even something that I really even considered so much. But let's see about swapping out some of these parts. So as I sort of suspected with these KOs, either they're the same mold that's been modified or it's a mold that is different. So, but this does not fit. It's too tight. So the peg is too big. You could shave this down a bit to fit on there. There's ways to do it. But yeah, so once you shave it down to fit on a vintage one, you could do that. You could make it fit by shaving down these holes and making them just a little bit bigger. But the pegs are too big for this. So they do that on purpose so that they can't, maybe that's one way they get around getting in trouble and all that kind of stuff in fourth party. So these parts do not fit vintage right out the box. You could make them fit, but then they would never fit this one ever again. So we're about to get into the complex transformation. I do want to show this does open up. Just like the vintage one opened up, and my vintage one has, for whatever reason, one of these little characters in it. So gold driver. It's not part of something that came with this back in the day originally. So very complex transformation for the time. No, not really at all. You pull out on these legs. A little hesitant. I was surprised it was so tight. It was actually really tight. I'm not used to that. I'm used to them easily, smoothly transforming and not being so really, really tight, which is kind of a good thing that it's tight. It's not going to be a floppy mess like some of these, but yeah, that's a good thing. Now this does have ratchets on it, so I wonder if, yep, so you can open it at a certain angle and it holds based on a ratchet inside. So I'm not used to that because every one I have, because I have like 4, 5 of these, they're all floppy messes. So this is sort of new to me to have it this tight and this new. So we're going to pull the arms, which this is really tight too. Very, very interesting. Much different experience than what I'm used to with having floppy messes. So it's not like this is a difficult transformation in the slightest, but I'm trying to be careful because you know, it could break. Let me split the wings there, and then we get it, pull out these parts here and put on it. So really kind of an interesting feeling here to have a new Wheeljack, a new vintage toy. Generally, my whole plan to buy something like this would be to keep it in the package and just display in the package. Of course, you could put the genie back in the box with this, the way I cut it open, but here comes these parts. This is another thing that you really can't go back on, is once you pull these missiles off of the sprue, you really can't put them back on the sprue. So that's another genie that's going to have to come out of the bottle and stay out of the bottle. So the missiles that go into here, and we'll see about that. There it is. And it fires, yeah. So it does have the firing mechanism going on and all that kind of stuff. So pretty cool. Let's put them in place real quick on the shoulders. And both sides. And put the missiles in there. And we have a Wheeljack ready to go, looking complete vintage. Something that I have never, well, haven't had an adult life. I just have decided to spend on the money on that kind of stuff, on tracking down vintage accessories. But this is a first for me in 30 years or something like that, to have a full, complete Wheeljack. Quite an interesting experience. So yeah, let's come back and take a look at it. Alright, so I just wanted to mess with it a little bit and kind of see what I feel about this figure. And he feels good. He feels pretty solid. I actually think that I kind of missed something in transformation. I think you're supposed to open these wings here too, if that's a thing that I forgot to do. And I'm not used to having these on it. These don't hold up if you move it around at all. So interesting stuff going on with this figure as vintage, and just kind of reliving vintage and knocking these off. So once I took these off, I did kind of loosen them up by taking them off and messing around with them. So that kind of was a negative. That's just me experimenting with it. Let's push them on a little bit harder and tighter. Let me get those missiles back in there. So yeah, there he is, looking pretty good and feels pretty solid. I have a couple of issues, a couple of minor issues here with him. I do notice that the hands are kind of loose. Now I did tighten this side up and it is a little bit better. I just tightened this screw and this screw, and there's tension there. And then this one here I didn't tighten, so it's still kind of loose. So that's something probably plagues all of the vintage ones too. You just got to tighten those and tighten those up. That's how it looks from the back. And so, you know, Wheeljack doesn't match the animation. It sure doesn't match the picture and all that kind of stuff. And as a kid, I was so happy to have the figure. I was happy to have the character, but I knew it really didn't match the animation. Sure doesn't match the artwork because of the way, the limits of the engineering at the time and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny how they would base this character off of this figure and they really don't match so much. But we'll bring in the vintage one to do a comparison. I want to show how loose mine is as a vintage one, and it is just very loose as the vintage one. That just came off. And then there it is. So don't know much about that. Let me get that fixed. So I in real time broke my vintage one, so I just grabbed another vintage one. I got like 4, maybe I have more somewhere else, but I got 4 that are pretty much whole. And so there's my stand-in. Now here's the thing about this. This does come with stickers on a sticker sheet. I'm not going to apply these. I'm just going to leave it. I do kind of want this to look mint in the box, all that kind of stuff. But you can go ahead and apply those if you want to. It does come with the stickers, die cut, and all that kind of stuff. And the instructions. And I guess since I'm at that, and you got the decoder. So here they are side by side, exact same thing, more or less. This one's, it seems like the KO stands a little bit taller because there's better tolerances on it. It doesn't kind of slouch down and stuff. So let's see. On the original vintage one, I don't think the hands aren't as floppy as on this one. So that's tolerance issue or whatever. Or if they really are using the same mold, they just modified it or something slightly, then we're going to have some of those tolerance issues from it just getting older and more worn out. I don't know. I really don't know what they're doing with the molds or where the molds came from, but it's really, really close, almost exact, almost perfect. I mean, you can kind of see side by side what they look like, and then let's get the side of them looking. Well, it's kind of hard to compare because I don't have any of the vintage parts for it. So here we go with the back. And yeah, that looks pretty darn good. Let's see how he looks next to Optimus Prime. So let's do some comparisons. I want to say that this whole experience is making me appreciate the Masterpiece one so much more. And I know I've had these vintage ones and I've even messed with them and used them in comparisons and all that kind of stuff, but going from spending a lot of time with this guy today and then pulling out the Masterpiece version that's supposed to match it paint-wise and all that kind of stuff really does make me appreciate what Takara did with Masterpiece. And, you know, I've called in the past for more Masterpiece versions to be made of this and stuff to fall, but I do think Takara did a pretty good job the first go-around, so I'm not in a huge rush to see a new version of this. And then here he is next to, of course, G1 Optimus Prime. Now, this is not the KO version or the fourth party. This is the original real deal, side by side, so we can see how that looks. Swapping them out with the Earthrise. I don't know if you guys remember, but mine had an issue where mine was missing a part of it, and so I actually just returned mine after I did my review, and I picked another one up and it's still sealed, so I have the Earthrise or whatever, Siege or whatever they called that version. Still, I was looking and looking and looking. I was like, "Where's my loose one?" Oh, I have a sealed one. I haven't opened yet, but that's how it looks next to Earthrise. And remember, Carbot versus Minibot, and I think this is important for Masterpiece collectors to kind of remember where scale was back in the day. Although Vintage didn't really follow, the G1 didn't really follow scale, the Minibots are not the exact same size as Carbots. It's just something to kind of remember and keep in mind. Alright, so this is my look at the fourth party KO of Wheeljack that you can get at Show Z. I have a link down below for you to pick it up, $45 if you're interested in this. But it's not perfect. The accessories will not fit your vintage figure. It's not an exact match. And it is decent quality, but I did notice that you got some kind of loose floppy hands on it and a couple things in there. So with that, $45, not horrible, not bad. A lot of people are going to say, well, but Hasbro can put them out for $35, so why aren't the KOs like $20? But I don't think they make a bajillion of these, and I think eventually you're going to see shows these sold out, and they're not going to come back, and if they do, it's going to be a long time. So with that, I jumped on it and picked it up right away, and I'm surprised Optimus Prime hasn't sold out yet. But anyhow, I want to know from you, what do you think about this? Are you in the market for vintage G1 Transformers? Is Wheeljack one that's on your list? Do you already have one? Let me know what you think about pricing of the original vintage one. And is this worth $45? Do you ever find a complete vintage one for $45? Loose, beat up? I don't think so. I don't know. But I'm not in the market for paying the vintage prices. But I am in the market for paying $45 for this. So I think it's definitely worth the value if you're collecting vintage. If you're not collecting vintage, you probably aren't too interested in it, but it's kind of fun to take the trip down memory road. But anyway, let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe. Tell your hanger out.
Right now, that water is hotter than any substance we know.
Not harder than my hydraulic knuckles.
Wheeljack's been immobilized.
I sure hope this works.
I don't get it, Carly. How did you know how to reverse the effect of the immobilizer?
I realized the ion flow could be redirected by a simple wire crossing.